Personal aim. We can all understand what aim means in life. It gives us direction, and without aim we meander, going nowhere. Even without having aim in life, perhaps one simply want to remain alive as long as possible, or keep their money, comforts, independence and so on. This is a kind of aim, though a very poor one. We are not going anywhere, but simply clinging to what we have. However, we may want a particular job or to pass an examination, obtain a degree, and then we have definite aim, a direction in life. However, we find we have to make sacrifices to attain it, to discard what is useless and concentrate on what is useful to attain this aim in life. Aim in the work has similarities to aim in life, however it is also different in many ways. A comparison can be made up to a point, but aim in the work is not really the same thing because it is aim in a different direction from life, in a way, even contrary to life. Looking at personal aim in the work sense, on being. The most general definition of what aim means in a work sense, is that it is to hear what the work offers, and to do what it says. Aim in the work is always connected with the act of self-remembering. This is because in a state of self-remembering the individual can receive help, which cannot reach them in their ordinary states of consciousness. There's just too many other things going on. Certain influences in the universe can only penetrate as far as the third state of consciousness, where we are conscious of ourselves, or self-conscious. If at the same time as we remember ourselves, we remember an aim, then we are able to get help. For example, we could then understand our aim better. Aim may be too general, or contain an inner contradiction. It can be too difficult, it may be too complicated and needs to be broken up into simpler parts. It may have no sense to it at all. In making aim, people usually try to run before they can walk. With regard to work on being, the first aim in the work must be to acquire self-knowledge, a knowledge of one's being, a deep sense of self, and then gratitude for who and what we are. Not dreaming always of being or becoming someone else. This applies to everyone. Knowledge of the work is one thing, self-knowledge is another thing. Without self-knowledge we cannot make aim about ourselves. Real self-knowledge, as distinct from imaginary ideas and illusions about oneself, can only come from direct and long-continued personal observation of the different sides of ourselves. That is why the work begins with self-observation, as we must see how we act, how we speak, and what things are in us, in this thing called ourself which we take for granted. The work offers careful instruction as to what we must observe. These instructions should be followed, not for themselves but for what they lead us to. They are a means, not an end. Alerting us to what things keep us asleep. All the many things we are told not to do and the few things that we are told to do in the work are connected with the idea that man can awaken from sleep, then fall under better influences. This is the grand aim of the work, and we must never lose sight of it, because personal aim must agree with the whole aim of the work, which is awakening. It must lie in the same direction, and not in some other or opposite path, because otherwise a contradiction appears. If we are studying a system about awakening from sleep, we cannot make a personal aim that causes us to sleep more deeply than ever. Personal aim can only begin after some real self-knowledge is gained through direct observation in the light of the instructions of the work. In order to work on our being, we must see something in our being to work upon. We cannot work on nothing. At first all is in darkness, however, and we can see very little in ourselves. Conscious objective self-observation begins to admit a ray of light, and we then dimly see a few things. This light, created through the friction of self-observation, should gradually grow stronger through practice, until we catch sight of something in us that is clear and beyond doubt. We may be startled, and if so are now in a position to make some personal aim, to work against that thing that we have seen in ourselves. Suppose it to be some bad negative emotion, some really evil ill will. Hitherto we have identified with it and so have been it, and it has been us. We have been under its power for years. Our task will then be to separate ourselves internally from it and not, as it were, touch it internally more than we can help. This will be a personal aim on the side of work upon being. However, most people are satisfied with themselves, although not with their circumstances. So when they are told they must work on their being, they either do not understand what it means or do not see why they should do so. If an individual in the work is capable of observing themselves sincerely, they cannot remain satisfied for long in the light of the work. From a life point of view, we may see no reason to work on ourselves. However, the work point of view is different from a life world view. The work is about awakening, whereas life puts us to sleep and tries to prevent us from awakening, making us all do things that keep us asleep. So we must distinguish between life and the work. There may be no reason why one should not do something in life, but every reason why we should not do it in the work. Unless we make this distinction, we remain in a state of confusion about the meaning of aim in the work. For example, in life we can dislike everyone if we want to, hate people and spread scandal or enjoy our negative emotions. But in the work we cannot do this, because we are destroying everything inside us by being so toxic. If we are in this work, we are under more laws than the ordinary person, so that means that we have to do additional things. We have to work. Then the laws that we place ourselves under lead to our own inner evolution, and eventual freedom from the 48 laws of the earth. Many people in the work find difficulty in understanding what personal aim means with regard to work on the side of their being, on the kind of people they mechanically have become. Here is a definite stage in the work. They cannot see what to work on in themselves. One reason is that they do not apply the ideas of the work to themselves, and do not try to do what the work tells them to do. They do not observe themselves from this angle, being self-satisfied with life. They do not see the place, so to speak, where work on themselves begins. They are not estimating themselves from what the work says, but from life standards. Work standards are, however, quite different from life standards. We may be all right in life, but all wrong in the work. That is why it is necessary to realize that the work is a new way of thinking, it's a new standard, a new thing altogether, from which we can begin to estimate ourselves in quite another light, not in the light of external life but in the light of the work. The work is to make us think differently, to change our mind, change our ways of thinking, so that we begin to look at ourselves in a new way. This is metanoia. Imagine a troop of monkeys. They may be perfectly good monkeys and satisfied with themselves. But if they have to become responsible human beings, they must follow a new way of thinking, a new concept of what they must be. And, from the standpoint of conscious humanity, that is, fully developed men who have reached the level of the divine intelligence of the sun and its 12 laws, we are nothing but monkeys and of really no importance at all. We are nothing but an experiment in self-evolution. All personal aim on a small scale is a means, not an end. It is to make us think and awaken. Then to keep us awake. Aim is on different scales. Aim on a great scale is to be awakened from sleep, to attain inner liberation. But to say that this is one's aim is not enough. We may see something in the far distance as our overall aim, but in order to get to it, we find that many lesser aims are necessary. We may say that we want to go to China. But to get there, we must do many things in between and need to have enough money to buy a ticket. P.D. Ouspensky pointed out that aim is like this: we see far off a light that we wish to reach. But on approaching it, find many lesser lights, like lampposts along a road, that we must pass one by one, before we attain that final aim. Let's suppose that an individual aims at becoming conscious, at escaping from the circle of mechanical humanity. They do not of course understand what this means, they do not understand their aim. To become man number 5, number 6, or man number 7, an individual must first become man number 4, balanced man, a man in whom all centers work correctly, intellectual, emotional, instinctive or moving. To become balanced, a person must begin to notice what center in them predominates, and interferes with the proper development of their other centers. An instinctive man, for instance, a man who consults his own comfort first, who loves agreeable bodily sensations and appetites before anything else, cannot become balanced man, because all his psychic energy is used up in these agreeable bodily sensations. His aim then must be to work against the predominance of one center in him, which causes things to be lopsided and prevents the other centers from developing. If we understand what has been said, we can see that in such a case it is only by seeing himself, and estimating his inner state in the light of the work, that a man will become dissatisfied with himself. Viewing himself from life, there is no reason why he should attempt to be different from what he is. Or let's take someone whose center of gravity lies in the intellectual center. They are only interested in theories and abstractions. In life, there is no reason why they should be dissatisfied with themselves. Through observation in the light of the work, in its teachings, they will begin to be dissatisfied with their state of being. It is only through understanding the ideas of the work that one can make work aim. It is only by beginning to think in a new way and viewing themselves in that light, that we can make a work aim. One cannot make a work aim if they think as they always have done. By seeing themselves in the light of the work view, a person can see what is wrong with them in a work sense. In a life sense they will see nothing wrong, because life will not judge them, but the work will judge them, exactly in terms of their valuation and understanding of it. They will begin to judge themselves, to read their book of life. The work judges no one, but the individual will begin to judge their being, and when this begins, they have a point in the work on themselves. With regard to the question of whether one can provide examples of what personal aim means. On the side of knowledge, personal aim means to become familiar with the ideas of the work. On the side of being, personal aim means to observe ourselves in the light of the knowledge of the work, and then apply it in a practical sense to the self, to our daily life. Personal work on being begins when we notice something that the work tells us about in ourselves. Are we able to notice in ourselves when we are negative? Have we noticed in ourselves where we are too identified? Have we noticed daydreaming? Have we noticed wrong talking? Have we noticed what false personality means in ourselves? Have we noticed where we justify ourselves? Have we noticed lying? Have we noticed what sleep means? Have we noticed what making accounts means? And so on. Start with one single thing that you have noticed and begin to watch it, and then try to work against it. But start with something you have no doubt about. Start with something clear and distinct, then try for a time to observe it, and not to consent to it internally. Once we start, the way opens out before us, but we must actually start from something definite and then do this in the light of the meaning of the work and its great aim. If we find that we cannot keep our aim as first intended, because it is too difficult, modify the aim, and then you may find that a better aim is suggested to you, especially if you remember your aim whenever you try to remember yourself. Everything taught in this work on its practical side shows more than one aim to us. We must begin therefore with one definite thing. Then after a time can include the rest. For example, we cannot confine ourselves simply to working say on one form of irritation, or one form of negative emotion and not do anything else. If we really start to work on our being, from one thing in the work, we find that it is necessary to do all the other things in order to keep our aim. Understand that if you hold too long to one small aim exclusively, and neglect everything else in the work, it is useless. Our aim, whatever it starts with, must eventually regard all other things that we are taught in the work. Otherwise we simply make our aim ineffective, if not worse because it is unsupported. Therefore one must start with one definite thing that we have observed in ourselves, and then find that everything else taught becomes necessary as well if we wish to keep the aim that we began with. Every side of the practical teaching of this work must become our aim. Then, if we cannot work in one way, we will find that we can work in another way. The whole teaching is necessary to effect any change in being. Here are therefore some suggestions. Anything anti-mechanical is a temporary aim and helps us to awaken. All making of effort against mechanicalness is aim. Efforts made when we are tired are useful, if we ourselves make them, otherwise not. Aim must be made by everyone about wrong talking, negative talking, scandal and gossiping, which destroys the force of the work in us. It is a form of lying and lying can destroy essence itself. Try to notice what you say. If you are unable to in the moment, then go through it afterwards. Try to see what you are like in your talking and then really think about it. Find out what helps and what hinders you in working, and what stops you from working. By adhering to work aim we create will. We should therefore weigh aim and see what we are prepared to give up for it. That is the true meaning of sacrifice. Aim requires effort. Notice what you regard as a nuisance, and make yourself passive for a time. Notice your inner doubts and try occasionally to answer them clearly from work ideas. This is a very good occasional aim and makes us think. Observe your boredom and your tendency to speak of your life as dreary and so on. This is very important, as it prevents a lot of self-poisoning. When you have just criticized someone, go over what you said carefully, and apply it to yourself. This neutralizes negativity. When you are alone, do not let yourself think you are quite alone and out of the work. People allow themselves to change too much in this regard, they let go and relax, so to speak. Remember that with regard to making aim about negative emotions, that emotions are much quicker than time. We may not be able to check them at first, but can remember them afterwards and realize what has happened. This makes it possible to know them better beforehand. Aim must be made from work eyes, not mechanical eyes. We cannot make aim suddenly. People in life swear they will not do this or that thing again. In the work we must not make resolutions like this, as it leads to nothing. Aim must be made consciously with insight and through long observation, in view of realizing what is putting us to sleep and what helps us to stay awake. Finally, we must remember that in this work the development of all parts of centers is an aim. This means that we must overcome ignorance and get to know as many as possible of the branches of knowledge and study that exist in life, because each one develops some particular part of a center. If we do this in the light of the meaning of the work, understanding why it is necessary, then it will help us to awaken. But if we do it from a life point of view, in order to be superior to other people, to outrival others, then we will be doing it in a useless manner. And do not think that because others know more than you do about any particular subject or craft that you can learn that, it is not worthwhile. The point of this work is self-development, development of yourself on every side, and whether other people do anything better than you makes not the slightest difference. Remember that to take up anything new requires effort. Wherever you find yourself in life, if you are in this work you should be able to make good, to take it as work. This aspect of the work can give us many different kinds of aims. This can be generalized under the work phrase, struggle against ignorance.